Hello, I'm Dr. Rick McKinney, founder and executive director of iRest Incorporated and Promised Land 21. Professionally, I'm a former church pastor and regional church administrator, university professor, and university administrator. Currently, my profession is as a counseling psychologist, clinical psychotherapist specializing in criminal, addictive, and emotional behaviors. I'm also the founder of Cognitive Spiritual Therapy, CST, a holistic intervention that uses scientific supported faith-based interventions, tools designed for use by both laity and professional people of faith. Now let's turn our attention to Phase 1, the REST Faith-Based County Reentry Plan. I've developed a comprehensive national plan detailing a project organized to engage the faith-based community to address major social problems in partnership with federal agencies and local organizations. This project will save the federal and local government billions of dollars while increasing homeland security. I've named this project the REST Faith-Based County Reentry Project. The purpose of this project is to duplicate the REST Philly project in every U.S. county. The REST Philly project is a faith-based model pre- and post-reentry project for inmates, ex-offenders, addicted populations, and their families. Most of the counseling, mentoring, and basic human needs services necessary for each client to remain crime and drug-free will come from their being assigned to a faith-based church of their choice to receive appropriate and court-mandated services. The purpose of this video is to partner with select local, state, county, and/or city governments to set up a research-framed working model of the very successful REST Philly faith-based reentry project, and through rigorous scientific research, measure its portability, duplication, efficiency, effectiveness, and ability to build new, highly trained faith-based members in a local faith-based army of compassionate volunteers. If the research findings are positive on each tested item, then the REST Faith-Based Reentry County project, duplicated in every U.S. county, could save the federal and state governments $12 to $14 billion each year in criminal justice department cost savings or cost avoidance. And billions more would be saved in other related federal and local government social service related budgets. These figures are from the Justice Policy Institute. This REST County Faith-Based Reentry Program is my 15th faith-based project, assisting FBOs, faith-based organizations, mostly churches, address social and community problems involving troubled and in-troubled populations. My professional journey covers a span of 40-plus years, working in 29 states, 51 counties, 47 cities, 10 prisons, 3 psychiatric and addiction hospital units, as well as a number of private treatment programs. My unique learning from the previous 14 projects, my expansive graduate education and training, and my previous partnership with federal and local government agencies, public and private social service organizations, all make this 15th project, the REST County project, doable for me. The 14th project, the REST Philly project, the most comprehensive faith-based reentry counseling project to date, is built on the progressive development of the first 13 projects. It is the model for the REST County project. I am supported by what research experts are saying about REST and what we have accomplished to date. There have been at least 5 major research studies on REST Philly, and 3 of them sponsored by the U.S. National Institute of Justice. I'm quoting just a few of these research findings, conclusions, and professional comments, beginning with this first sponsored study by the National Institute of Justice. The REST logic is theoretically and empirically sound, a proven behavioral change model with an incarcerated population. REST uses religion intentionally, but it is not religion. It is behavioral therapy with a spiritual twist. The second study, Back into the Fold, Helping Ex-Offenders Reconnect Through Faith, a comparison of 16 faith-based prison programs from across the country, states, rest is the brightest light in the grim world of reentry. The only program that addresses to some degree the majority of the services that inmates need to remain crime and drug-free. The greatest potential for becoming a national model of prison faith-based program may define the future faith-based prison programs. As a means of reducing recidivism among inmates, is the most portable model studied to date, is the only faith-based reentry program that can provide reentry services for 1,000 inmates each year in one location. The third study, Instituting Lasting Reforms for Prisoners Entering in Philadelphia, a random sample of 38,000 inmates researched by the Urban Institute of Justice, had this to say, rest has the highest positive response, 70.8% of all prison programs. Other printed statements about rest are as follows. One of the most promising faith-based corrections and prisoner reentry programs in the United States. The Rest Philly Project, a national faith-based model. One of the brightest lights in reentry and criminal rehabilitation. Rest training and interning is so intense and thorough that rest could continue with or without the direct supervision of Dr. McKinney. These scientists also verified and utilized the following statistical facts when drawing their conclusions about the Rest Philly project. 200 participating faith-based organizations, 1,500 trained counselors and mentors, 300 students completed 2-year internship, 5,000 inmates applied for 16 weeks of cognitive group therapy, 2,200 were approved, 1,420 completed it. Rest provided counseling services in 6 Philly prisons and 3 state facilities. And the courts approved Rest as a resource for inmate early release, alternative to incarceration, and made referrals of ex-offenders, family members, and persons with addictions. How does the REST program relate to the White House Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships? Well, what REST does is an extension of the faith-based work of 3 U.S. presidents, Clinton, Bush, and Obama. REST is a working model of their combined intentions. For example, President Clinton opened the door for faith-based funding with his charitable choice legislation. Bush used his executive power to establish the White House Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiative. As president, Barack Obama, upon election, agreed with both Clinton and Bush. Positive faith motivates citizens to be positive, and that faith can bring people together as a unifying power. Let's take a moment and look at the historical background of the Bush faith-based initiative movement from 2001 to 2009. The Bush doctrine was compassionate conservatism, and as such, he was fulfilling his campaign promise to the faith community to do 2 things: to reduce the national budget, to show compassion to the less fortunate. His compassionate problem involved major social problems. Problems as hunger, housing, violence, poverty, and education. The pre-Bush federal system for addressing major social problems included special government agencies, private business, and the nonprofit organization. After reviewing this methodology and its performance, Bush found the results were negative. They were ineffective and inefficient. They were too costly with poor results. He concluded that this triad was weak and missing a major piece. His solution was to get better results at a cheaper cost to the government. And one way to do that was to expand the present group by including the faith-based community. In so doing, he created a new but controversial method of addressing major social issues. To sell the inclusion of the faith-based community as a social service partner, Bush developed a 6-step strategy. Step number 1, to officially establish the faith partnership with an executive order. Step 2, he budgeted $600 million for the faith-based funding and spread it among the federal social service departments. Number 3, he created rules for faith-based organizations to have equal access to federal funding. Step number 4. He set up a national campaign to sell his new social service methodology of a faith-based partnership with the federal government. During the campaign, Bush identified 4 statistical facts or reasons for including the faith community in addressing major social problems. Number 1. The government was failing at solving social problems. Number 2, the old method was too expensive and not very effective or efficient. Number 3, that the faith-based community could get better results cheaper. And number 4, that the faith community could reach and service more people because it is located where most of the social problems exist. Bush argued that the faith-based community had 6 important elements that federal agencies, private or non-faith-based organizations cannot provide. Transformational power, volunteerism, sustained allegiance, morality, commitment, a sense of mission, cost effectiveness. President Bush also stated that the role of the church is so important because it is in the grassroots where the societal problems are, and they are accessible in the evenings and on weekends. He also listed 8 targeted troubled or in trouble populations that the faith-based community has been providing social services for decades. They are drug-addicted persons, welfare mothers, homeless persons, incarcerated persons, persons in reentry from prison, children in foster homes, victims of violence, persons in crisis. President Bush set aside money in government agencies to fund faith-based organizations and promoted the government's need for a national, highly trained, well-managed, and supervised massive army of compassionate faith members. REST has been recruiting, educating, training, and interning faith-based members as compassionate counselors and mentors for decades, building the REST Reentry Volunteer Army. Our motto is to train thousands to reach millions. In March 2001, the Washington Times newspaper was made aware of my setting up and operating the REST Philly Reentry Project. They wanted to do a special report on our reentry project and to gather information on the REST project in both the prison and in the local churches that were participating in the reentry program. They also asked for permission to take pictures both in the prison and in the churches that they visited. This request was also granted. They also interviewed the mayor, John Street, and interviewed me. The newspaper staff, including the photographer, came in while 200 inmates were enrolling in our next 16-week faith-based group therapy program. They left there and then visited both male and female inmates who were completing the last week of their group therapy as a pre-release class in preparation for reentry. The mayor's interview was entitled "A Mayor with a Plan," and he focused on his belief that major cities could not properly address social problems such as crime, addictions, imprisonment, and reentry without the assistance of the faith community, and that he had hired me to recruit, enroll, organize, train, and supervise a large faith-based army of competent volunteers to help the city succeed. Prior to contracting with the city and county of Philadelphia, I had authored a 6-year drug elimination HUD grant for ex-offenders and re-entry inmates who had family members living in public housing in the city of Las Vegas. We named it the REST Las Vegas Project. It was extremely successful, earning several awards. At the end of that contract, I was invited to Washington, D.C. to speak at the annual National League of City Conference to present and to explain the REST Las Vegas project. And as a result, I had invitations and offers from several cities. Philadelphia was one of those cities who made me one of the best offers, and I accepted it. In the newspaper, my interview was titled Spiritual Counseling. My interview centered on questions about the success of our program, the rest training program, and questions concerning the inmate churches and the volunteers, their enrollment in the program by the hundreds, and their motivation for volunteering. Lastly, I was asked to explain the faith-based interventions that we use in our group and individual therapy, and the scientific research that was supporting the interventions that we used. The Washington Times promoted the article as a special report and aired it on the weekend. The narrative and pictures covered several pages. It was very well done. But the biggest surprise in the article was an interview with President George H. Bush, who had been following the REST program and acknowledged that Philly is fast becoming the place where faith is making a difference. At the invitation of the Philadelphia mayor, President Bush came to Philadelphia and was greeted by approximately 500 REST faith-based, highly trained social service reentry soldiers who were anxious to personally meet the president and who were very warmly praising the work that REST was doing and the model that we were developing. Shortly afterward, it was announced that Elaine Chao, Secretary of Labor, would be coming to Philadelphia representing President Bush. I was asked to welcome and introduce her to the city. After her speech, she announced that she had brought a gift from the president for the city's reentry program, a check for $1.3 million. I gladly accepted on behalf of the city's reentry program, with the understanding that there would be much more money coming from other federal departments. To assure that the faith-based funding was available for viable faith-based organizations and programs, each year Bush increased the faith-based budget, and during his first 5 years, over $2 billion had been allocated for the faith community. President Bush now had a faith-based initiative justification problem. $2 billion of tax money set aside for the faith community, programs and projects across America, and he could not prove that they were producing better results for several reasons. Both the president and his faith-based social service movement were under attack, even by members of his own party. He had to find a model faith-based program. Bush identified 4 steps to justifying the faith-based solution. Number 1, identify a current model faith-based social service program. Number 2, it has to be a model that could be duplicated all across America. Number 3, it must have a highly trained and supervised national faith-based army of thousands of compassionate volunteers. Step number 4, this model must be able to withstand rigorous research with successful duplication and with efficiency and effectiveness results greater than non-faith-based organizations. For most researchers, REST would be an ideal study project. What are experts saying about REST as a resource for research? REST is a research-worthy therapeutic program. A long-term evaluation of the REST project would add a significant amount of knowledge to the field of faith-based programming. And a study of REST would add to our knowledge about a proven behavioral change model with incarcerated populations. And the conclusion of this study of faith-based reentry programs across America, ordered by the National Institute of Justice, was that REST was ranked as the #1 faith-based reentry program in America, and that a longitudinal, long-term research evaluation would provide important information on faith-based programming. President Bush realized his faith-based programs lacked research credibility, which was a dilemma for him and his $2 billion investment in the faith community. Until REST, he had no other faith-based model that could provide research credibility, the third step in his plan for justification. He came to Philly and observed our faith-based army and thousands of volunteer hours we accumulated each quarter for matching funds. The only question left for him was step 2, portability and duplicatable and credible research. Without credible research, with positive answers, hard evidence, the faith-based community of social service providers will not be accepted as equal partners with other social service providers previously mentioned, state and federal agencies, for-profit businesses, and non-profit organizations. Neither will there exist a level playing field for the faith-based social service organizations in receiving federal grants and contracts. The Bush faith-based initiative will become a history, and America will continue to struggle over social service problems. Despite all of the research studies on the REST Philly project, mostly based on accumulated statistics and comparative analysis. For example, the notion is that although the REST Philly reentry program is highly acclaimed, is this project unique only to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania? Or can it be transported and duplicated in other states, counties, and cities with the same level of positive outcomes? However, the major question in my mind was not related to my ability to set up a new project, which I've successfully accomplished on numerous occasions, but which credible research type would be most credible for the study of faith-based social service reentry populations and programs. And then 3 years ago, I was directed to a relatively new graduate school research book entitled Faith-Based Social Services, Measures, Assessments, and Effectiveness. And it stated its mission was to tackle the essential questions of where faith-based social services work effectively compared to secular alternatives. Professionals who reviewed this book labeled it as the Bible for social service research. In the book content, REST is identified as being the most promising faith-based research model. In a further discussion of REST, one of the statements made was that the literature suggests that both the cognitive behavior and faith-based aspects of this intervention, which focuses on emotional healing, has the potential to reduce criminal recidivism as well as improve problem-solving skills and psychological well-being. On behalf of the faith-based social service community and the faith-based social services researchers and writers, and for the validating of the President Bush's faith-based initiative and the $2 billion he invested, we accept the challenge to move forward with the REST Faith-Based County Reentry Project. Our next task is to identify and partner with interested federal, state, county, and city governments. In January 2019, we selected the state of Alabama for the 15th REST project and research study.